Uncle Mark,
Well, hello.
I'm looking out my window now, and it has started to snow, and I am dreaming of warmer climes and happier places.
Warmer climes and happier places and the ability to travel to them at some fucking
Right,
point.
yes. And someday to once again board a plane and get myself out the fuck of here.
Yeah. Same with me. Sunnier climes.
Well, I can promise you one of those two things.
Okay.
Not both.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Uncle Dan. It's snowing outside. Just as we sat down to record, Donald Trump was acquitted of inciting the deadly insurrection that he absolutely incited.
Right.
We're still under the vile yoke of coronavirus with new and dangerous strains abounding, so let's get the fuck out of here, yes?
Yeah.
Yay.
Let's go as far away as we can on the good earth. Let's flee this strife-ridden continent and take our journey to one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world, Easter Island.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Unfortunately, as we'll see, there's plenty of strife to go around. But our journey to this faraway island will at least allow us to add another member to our graveyard of the gods, Makimaki.
Makimaki.
Makimaki, spelled make as one word, but pronounced probably incorrectly Makimaki.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So let's just start off with a pronunciation disclaimer. Here come a lot of Polynesian names and words. I will get a lot wrong. This is not out of disrespect, but simply because A, very few pronunciation guides exist for this subject, and B, the harder I try to properly pronounce foreign words and names, the more racist I sound.
Yeah.
So I'll do my...
And also, see, we're kind of dumb people anyway, so you can't
Exactly.
expect much of us.
Yeah, go. I'll do my best. Just go easy on me.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
So Makimaki is the chief god of the pantheon of the people of Easter Island. He is the creator of humanity, the god of fertility, and the boss man of the pantheon. So he's a big deal there.
Classic.
Well, he was a big deal there. Interestingly, he appears to have never married, but has had several offspring that make up other parts of the pantheon. He is likely a version of the Tahitian god Tain or the Hawaiian god Kane. He is depicted as almost a bird-like creature with two huge eyes and a large beak-like nose, and in some cases even feathers. Resources about Makimaki are scarce, for reasons we'll discuss. So many of the attributes and mythologies about Makimaki have to be derived from the stories about Tain and Kane. However, although he sits atop the throne of the pantheon, he's still pretty mysterious.
Would it? Sorry, the pronunciation thing again. Would it be Tane and Kane?
Very likely.
Doesn't that sound? That to me sounds more like a Polynesian.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that only about a minute and a half ago I said I was going to pronounce a bunch of shit wrong. So I don't know if you'd stepped out for that part of my...
us is for sure.
In order to talk about the story of Makimaki, we'll need some context. Actually, a lot of context, because whatever he may have started as, surely the history of the island and the people who worshipped him had an effect on what he became. So let's talk about Easter Island, its people, and its history. It goes without saying, obviously, that Easter Island is not the original name. Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen, obviously mispronounced, called it Easter Island when he became the first European to see the island in 1722, in the time-tested tradition of not asking the people who live there what they called their home.
Right. Why would you do that?
Right.
That way you would have to give up your right to name it.
Do they have a flag?
The Spanish took the Spanish version of the name, Isla de Pascua, which is how it's referred to by Chile, who claims the island to this day. However, the current Polynesian name of the island is Rapa Nui, although that name was only coined during the slave raids in the 1860s.
Oh, interesting.
The actual original name of the island was either simply Rapa, or possibly Tepito o Tehenua, which loosely translates to the navel of the world, or possibly Mata Ki Te Rangi, which means eyes looking to the sky. Or it's possible that the name has been lost.
Right.
So the indigenous people of Rapa Nui are referred to in Spanish as Pascuense, which means Easter people, but they call themselves the Rapa Nui after their island. They are considered to be ethnic Polynesians. The first inhabitants arrived on the island sometime between 300 and 1200 CE. It's been hard to nail that number down, but most likely closer to the latter, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty recent. I would expect longer.
especially with what they've done with the island in the meantime.
Right.
And what's crazy about the time period in which these guys landed here is that this is not a crowded neighborhood. The nearest inhabited island is Pitcairn Island, 1,289 miles away, and the nearest continental point is the west coast of Chile, 2,182 miles away.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yes, it's out there. There is an oral tradition about who found the island. What is certain is that because the Earth is round, yes, it's round.
We've had this discussion.
We're done with that.
I blanked that out from last week. That was just too... I was trying to figure out a way to make sense of that, and I ran out of English.
Well, because of the curvature of the Earth, there is no dry land from which to see Rapa Nui. The original inhabitants arrived on this remote island in large canoes or catamarans without knowing where it was or if it was there.
Sure, yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, the same is true of a lot of islands in the Polynesian history, but man, go to Google Earth.
This is basically the story of Gilligan's Island. I mean, if you think about it.
If Gilligan's Island was filmed by Darren Aronofsky. So go to Google Earth and pull up Rapa Nui, and even though you search Rapa Nui, the result you'll get is Easter Island. But there you go. And then slowly zoom out. If the bottom doesn't drop out of your stomach as you see just how remote this island is, you're braver than I am.
Yeah.
It's truly shocking how just in the middle of absolute nowhere. Legend has it that a chief named Hotu Matua and his captain Tauku Iho discovered the island after one of Hotu Matua's men saw the island in a dream. Once settled, the people of Rapa Nui can at least vie for the title of the longest string of bad luck in history.
Oh, wow.
As we'll discuss, there are some oral histories that tell the story of this ill-fated island and its culture and religion, but most of that information has been lost to what was to come. Some oral histories were recorded by early explorers and anthropologists, and even though the Europeans did Rapa Nui no favors, the culture had gone down a dark and deadly path long before their arrival. There is perhaps a written history that exists in the form of several dozen wooden planks with a strange and still undeciphered form of writing known as Rongorongo. This is thought to be an independent form of writing. That is to say, it was not derived or descended from any other form of writing. If that's the case, it's one of the few independent forms of writing in human history.
Yeah.
So these were artifacts that were found on Rapa Nui. So it may be that we have a robust history of the people right in front of us, but we'll never decipher it. By the way, not one of these Rongorongo planks still exist on Rapa Nui. They are all in museums and private collections around the world because,
Yeah. As they should be.
Yeah.
Right. This belongs in a museum. If you're interested, you should look up these planks, just spelled like it sounds, Rongorongo. They're gorgeous, beautiful. And the language on them is extremely exotic. And like I said, not decipherable as far as we can tell. One of the things we know about the Rapa Nui was that aside from a pantheon of immortal beings like Makimaki, they were an ancestor-worshipping religion. They believed that those who came before held prominent places in the pantheon and not only provided their descendants with all they needed, but could be called upon for protection and blessings. These ancestor-worshipping practices are in the forms of the statues that are all over Easter Island, or Rapa Nui.
Oh, do they have statues? I hadn't heard that.
It's a little-known fact about Easter Island.
Exactly. So they pretty much immediately set about building these giant stone statues that are, ubiquitous all over the island. The statues, or moai, M-O-A-I, moai, were prominent chieftains and warriors and ancestors of the people. There have been 887 moai either under construction, completed, and in most cases destroyed, that have been inventoried on the island.
887?
887.
Jesus.
They built the lion's share of them between 1100 and 1680 CE using only stone hand chisels, which would have made their construction a nightmare.
Right, because your tool breaks as often as the surface breaks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of these took over a year to construct each. They were all made out of a solidified volcanic ash found in a single quarry and then fucking dragged to their proper location.
How?
Well, that's a great question. The largest, we'll talk about that. The largest moai, known as Paru, weighed 90 tons and was over 32 feet long. How exactly they moved them isn't known, but attempts have been made to recreate the process, which vary from like getting just enough brute force, enough people to drag them across the land, or what they think is more likely is they cut down trees to use as rollers.
Sure.
Right? Whatever else this religion was, and as we'll discuss, most of it is lost to the tragedies to come, it was not an easy religion. Being called upon to chisel rock with rock and then drag several ton statues across miles of rough terrain is what you might call a high-cost religion. Sometime in this period, it is believed that the island suffered some form of environmental change that began to put pressure on the flora and fauna of the island. But the Rapa Nui continued to nearly completely deforest their island, very possibly to make rollers for these mois. Rapa Nui was home to 21 species of tree, including the largest palm trees in the world, and at least 6 species of land bird. But by 1722, when the first European arrived on the island, the birds were extinct, and nearly all the trees were gone. There were just a few remaining less than 10 feet tall.
Wow.
If it's true that the island was mainly deforested due to make rollers for religious totems, then it's possible that this act ranks amongst the most costly consequences of religious belief in history.
Wow.
In his book Collapse, Jeremy Diamond describes the moment when the last tree was cut down on Rapa Nui and how the impulse towards self-destruction lives within us all.
Yeah, I read that book. That was very grim.
Yeah, and that happened. Someone cut down the last major tree on the island. I'm not trying to denigrate these incredible statues. They are freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Just to point out their pointlessness. This near total deforestation caused massive soil erosion, which crushed agriculture, and pretty much eliminated fishing and trade because of the lack of good wood to make boats. As their current inventory of boats decayed and became useless, these poor people were left stranded and starving on their own island. Somewhere in this sad story, the Polynesian rat found its way to the island. How and when is not exactly known, but it could have come from
is he in the WWE or the WWF?
Polynesian rat.
Yeah.
Lord.
He's a heel. He's a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The rat could have gotten to the island from regular inter-island commerce or even possibly from the aforementioned European visitors. But when it got there, it wreaked havoc on the already fragile ecosystem. The fact that the Rapa Nui society was extremely stratified did not help. In the 15th century, a sustained period of fighting broke out between the various tribes on the island that would continue to the 1860s. So
how big is the island, Doug? I don't have a good idea.
It's very small. I don't have the square mileage in front of me, but it's not a large island.
Wow.
By any stretch. But the tribes on the island broke into a centuries-long war. This fighting included the burning of fields and killing of farm animals.
Oh my God, it's 63 square miles.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Oh, fuck,
it's really small.
Jesus.
But subsequent to all of this environmental degradation and this prolonged war, social order just vanished, and predatory bands of the warrior class basically took over the island. Most people took to living underground, and starvation and homelessness prevailed. Jeremy Diamond maintains that the inhabitants resorted to cannibalism during this particularly fun time. This was when the period of Huri Maui, or statue toppling, began. One way to reduce the spiritual power of a competing tribe was to topple their moi.
Oh my God!
To ensure that they were not only toppled but broken. By the time the French missionaries arrived there in the 1860s, nearly all of the moi had been tipped over. Which is, you think about what they had gone through to construct those things, and then they commenced to just knocking them over.
It sounds actually perfectly human to me. This is like, and as an encapsulation of the human psyche, build all of the big things. Oh wait, you have big things too. Knock over your big things,
and decimate your environment in the process.
Right? Yeah. Perfect. It is perfect.
A population that had likely ranged in the 15,000s had been reduced down to between 2,000 and 3,000 by the 1770s when the Europeans showed up, but worse was to come. The 1722 visit by Jacob Roggeveen resulted in the death of about a dozen Rapa Nui, but there's not really any description of what caused that. I think it might have been a fight that broke out.
What caused it? Europeans.
Exactly.
Is what caused it. Jesus.
Exactly.
It's the cause of death for most of the fucking world.
Oh, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Then in the 1860s, Peruvian slave traders began their vile work, capturing around 1,500 of what was left of the island's population, which was only around 2,000.
Jesus.
and then they were sold into slavery. Among those likely captured and sold were the last Rapa Nui to know how to read Rongorongo, which is why it's now entirely lost.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's awesome.
It's really cool.
It's like it looks like something Keith Haring would have done.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of art form more than it does a language.
Yeah,
and you know what?
Really
it might
cool.
be. We'll never know. Eventually, the Peruvian slave traders had to repatriate. They were forced to repatriate some of their captives, but of course, they returned carrying smallpox and tuberculosis.
Why were they forced to?
Some of that, as slavery was being rolled back through the European states, the practice of going and capturing slaves on remote islands or African colonies was verboten. So that right, as we know, at some point in the Americas, and I forget me for forgetting the date, we had to live with the slaves we had. Right?
Yeah, that was fucked up. That was just mean.
Yeah, but so of course they repatriated these captives, and they came back with smallpox and tuberculosis,
right?
Which wiped out most of what was left of the population with such speed that some of the dead were not even buried.
Jesus!
By 1877, there were only about 111 Rapa Nui left alive on their island.
Oh my God!
During this prolonged period of misery, the population turned away from their strict ancestor worship and turned to what would be called the Birdman Cult, which brings us back to our old friend Makimaki.
Okay.
Rather than worshiping dead ancestors, the center of this new cult would become the winner of an annual competition wherein competitors would swim to the island of Motu Nui, collect the egg of a sooty tern, which is a type of bird, swim back to Rapa Nui, and scale the cliffs of Orongo with the egg intact. This was an incredibly dangerous competition, with many drowning, being killed by sharks, or falling off the cliffs.
What is with these people?
I don't know.
Stop it.
I know. The winner of this competition would be called the Tangata Manu, but he would not be the leader for that year. The honor would go to the Rapa Nui who had sponsored the competitor. That sponsor would lead the people for the next year. So make of that what you will. Makimaki was the primary deity of the Birdman cult, so named, obviously, because of the egg. And reigned supreme in the Rapa Nui religion right up until the time of the Catholic missionaries arrived, built a church, and imposed Catholicism on the wretched remnants of this culture in 1864.
Jesus fucking Christ.
At this point, the long, pretty shitty reign of Makimaki came to an end. Although he is still part of the indigenous Rapa Nui culture that is fighting for their rights and independence to this day.
How many people live there are there now?
There's about 7,700 or so people on the island, but only about 3,500 consider themselves to be cultural or
indigenous
Rapa Nui.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, there has been a slight bounce back, but what's left of these people have been fighting to illegal fishing off their shores, having their land sold off to sheep ranching corporations, and even being used as a military base during the dictatorship of Pinochet.
Oh, my God. Wow. Can we just leave them alone?
I know, right? Well, I don't know
if
that's a good idea.
They're literally so far away from everything. How do we not leave them
alone?
Right.
I know,
it seems like it's more trouble to not
They
leave
have the
them
biggest
alone.
moat in the world.
Well, it doesn't. I don't know if leaving them alone is the best course of action.
No,
after
maybe
all.
not.
So
they're a threat to themselves, and others are a threat to them.
Exactly, they're the panda of the human species, right?
Jesus.
And so let's see. In 1966, they were finally granted Chilean citizenship, and in 2007, they gained special territory status. Their story, perhaps ranking among the most tragic, finds itself in good company with indigenous peoples around the world, and it's not something that anyone should be proud of. However, there is one more interesting chapter in the saga of Makimaki. In 2005, astronomer Michael E. Brown discovered a new dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, originally given the name 2005 FY9. In 2008, it was renamed Makimaki, as the International Astronomical Union has taken to naming Kuiper Belt objects after more diverse pantheons.
Okay.
Yeah, Makimaki is the largest discovered dwarf planet after Pluto and orbits between 38 and 53 astronomical units, or AUs, from the Sun. That is to say, 38 to 53 times further away from the Sun than the Earth.
Right. Wow.
For reference, Neptune is 30 AUs away, and Pluto is 30 to 49 AUs away. So Makimaki is out there.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of poetic to naming an object so far out in the middle of nothing after the creator god of an island so far out in the middle of our small planet that I kind of love.
Yeah,
hopefully it still has trees.
Exactly. Makimaki has at least one very tiny moon that has yet to be named. So I thought we could send the International Astronomical Union some recommendations from the various and sundry deities and doofuses we have covered on the show. So how about at IAU? How about naming Makimaki satellite Crom, or Baphomet, or Supermoon Shanzi, or Lunar Bundy, or my favorite, why not go with Uncle Doug?
That's very diverse.
Yeah.
It would be Mars is the red planet, but Uncle Doug would be the first ginger planet.
There you go.
Technically a moon. So yeah, that's the sad story of Makimaki and the culture he was in charge of.
Wow.
Good job, man.
Yeah.
There you
that
go.
Was a wonderfully grim visit to what used to be the tropics.
I want to go there though. That I'm suddenly really interested in
it by all accounts, it's beautiful. It's very stark because, like I said, they're trying to reforest the island, but that obviously takes time.
Yeah.
So the windswept nature, when you look at the pictures of the statues, it looks like they're on this windswept, very stark, barren landscape. Well, it was not thus. It was a like all the other islands around it, Tahiti, Hawaii. It was completely covered in vegetation and trees, and was just completely scoured clean.
Well, once we're all vaccinated, we'll have a How to Heretic meetup out on Easter Island.
Well, we could do another movie recommendation here because apparently Mel Gibson made one of his very racist movies about Rapa Nui.
Oh, great.
Did you know that?
Perfect.
No.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but apparently it got made. I don't know what happened to it, but it was about the ancient history of Rapa Nui. So it's going to be extremely oddly anti-Semitic for a film with no Jews in it. But check it out.
Great.
All right. Well, let's move on.